So if we can understand, what does exactly LeapFin do? What is the company aiming to solve?
Sure. So the problem I would describe that we solve, I would say, is the great decentralization. And I would kind of juxtapose two things. If you look back, let's say 10 years ago, you had an ERP model where your order and your invoice and your payment and then your GL were all contained in a nice, very defined, very rigid data model, but the accounting happened along with your order to cash process. If you fast forward today and contrast that from 10 years ago, with all the innovation that we've had and all the investment in tech, and certainly, Cofi is an example of this. There is a tremendous amount of innovation that has happened for operational tools, for finance from an analytics perspective. The problem, though, is that because we went and decentralized all these operational functions, financial accounting and the nature of reporting and classifying operational events, that was kind of left behind, and it was an afterthought. And that operational event innovation left behind a pretty big problem. And so what LeapFin does is much like a data warehouse would, we'll go and extract and load and transform that into explicit financial records. If you're a tech company and someone ships you back a product and your engineering calls that something special, ultimately, well, what is that? Well, your revenue gets reversed because you no longer perform the revenue because the fulfillment got undone, and you got a return. So there's really two transactions in there, right? There's a contract modification on the return, and then there's also the return from an invoicing and a cash perspective. And so we model those as explicit objects, and then we then take and have basically a GL layer, which converts and ledgerizes all those transactions into debits and credits to make and basically digitize your income statement and your balance sheet. And we actually push that into your ERP via our pre-built integrations. So what happens then is that now, if you talk to a finance and accounting person, over 50% of their time, from almost any study I've read, is data processing. They're not adding value with analysis. They're not thinking about optimizing policies or writing different tax policies or being more compliant. They're processing data. So what this enables them to do is have a data processing platform that takes on all of those disparate sources and all that. They still own the business logic. They own the accounting policies, but that data processing is owned by LeapFin. And so we find folks that are that need a rigorous level of financial reporting and auditability really care about this. So, if you're looking for a financing event, if you're looking for an IPO, if you've got debt covenants with your bank, those are usually great reasons why folks start talking to LeapFin, because they no longer can rely on accountants and spreadsheets from disparate sources, because there's a key question that's not being answered. How do I know that I can trust my data? If you're pulling data from 15 places and then putting it into Excel sheets, and then they're getting updated by multiple parties, and then you're loading them at a single point in time in your GL, no one knows how we can trust the data. But if you have that in a platform where you run tests against it, and those tests are then exposed to folks, and that you've completely, you have completeness and accuracy checks, now you know that you can trust the data. And that's one of the biggest value adds that LeapFin adds, where 10 years ago that concept would not have been a problem that folks, I think, needed to solve, because the great decentralization hadn't yet happened. So that's a little bit of the problem, and what LeapFin does to solve it, and then why folks care about that problem relative to their own strategy.
Awesome.